Hi, I'm Hamid Kasongo, and this is my DES 313 Unit 2 prototype presentation. I have developed a tabletop adaptation inspired by fear and hunger. Player experience goal. I focused on delivering a player experience goal of overwhelming dread, the feeling that death lurks around every corner and resources are never enough. Safety is always uncertain. Research. What I took from each game. In Unit 1, I defined dread through key sub goals: vulnerability, isolation, and scarcity. Along that, each of those three goals all link to one big goal: the inevitability of loss or death. These ideas shaped every mechanic and every choice you'll see within today's prototype. I analyzed three games to understand how they generated sustained dread. The first and foremost game was Fear and Hunger. It showed me it showed me the power of lasting injuries, severe resource starvation, and morally ugly survival choices. The second game I decided to do was Dark Souls franchise, which demonstrated distant and unconditional safe zones, i.e., the bonfires, which gave relief but never removed danger. The third game I decided to go into is Escape the Dark Castle. This gave me event driven uncertainties, dice mediated outcomes, and constant pressure. These became my best practice of rules for the prototype. Mechanic intent table. Here's the research translations. Shrines equal my version of Dark Souls bonfire tension. Persistent limb injury equals my fear and hunger vulnerability. Event and loot decks equal my escape the dark castle's uncertainty and scarcity. Rotating boss keep the maps unsafe and shortening comfort windows. And I had coded at least one player death per run to protect the tone that you don't all win. As you can see from each of these from this table, each of the slides, where my inspiration draws from for each mechanic, my player intention, how those work, and the current status of them. Prototype overview. This is Fear and Hunger, the board game. It plays 1 to 5 players, 60 to 120 minutes, and mixes dungeon tiles, exploration, resource tokens, events, loot, monster decks, limb and status tracking, and rotating boss pressure controlled by the GM. Players pursue two victory paths. They either escape via a rare scroll, learn throughout the dungeon by luck, or ascend to a new god. But the system always ensures that one of the players always dies before the end, reinforcing that sense of player dread that I am looking for. Let's start with my first mechanic: scarce and risky shrines. There is a shrine located within the map, and when you land on them, it allows you to pray for a buff or a heal. But the effect is gated by a dice roll and can attract attention or even curse you. The intent is to create an anxious decision point. Do you either chase the relief now and risk a worse future? Or do you go out there and not even recover, not take that chance? This mirrors the unsafe safety lesson from Dark Souls bonfires, whereas you can sit at the bonfire, restore, rest, get all your loot, but the creatures will return and lurk. Or do you go low loot, low HP, and continue with what you have? The second mechanic: persistent limb injury and status effects. Many events and monsters target limbs. Severe infections can force you to amputate your limbs to survive, trading survivability for mobility or attack power. This system provides Fear and Hunger signature long tail vulnerability. Every injury matters and compounds dread because you carry consequences forward. So if you were to lose HP here, be poisoned, that will stay with you for the rest of the game. Mechanic 3: Event uncertainty, and resource drain. Movement reveals dungeon tiles. Each event tile can spring traps, monsters, or even nothing. Loot, loot tiles can be frail. They can give healing items, food, but they are scarce and degrade as you travel. Dice and coin flips inject uncertainty similar to Escape the Dark Castle. Event pressures allow creatures to come and force you to fight. You either stay or you run. Players never fully plan their way out, which continues to sustain the tension. The iteration and testing. In early player testing, players stockpile too many healing items, so tension dropped during the mid-game. To cut this, I wanted to cut the healing frequency in the loot and added infection escalation to untreated wounds. So if you're injured, stockpiling on healing items won't always be good. You should use it instantly. I also learned that groups also turtled up in corners, so I increased boss movement, allowing the bosses to move around the map per round. These changes improved scarcity and the constant threat of the enemies moving around, both core to my player experience goal. Evaluation versus player experience goal. Did the mechanics deliver dread? Scarcity now lands between players who argue amongst each other for food and who has where players should go and where should land. Vulnerability from limb loss scares them, but they need clearer iconography. Uncertainty is working through the event tiles. Some feel swings are unfair, so I'll tune probabilities. Inevitable death lands dramatically when the first player dies, but pacing to that moment varies with luck. I'm exploring a turning captive titan, the gameplay. Evaluating against a goal is a required part of the presentation brief, so I am showing you where it hits and where it doesn't. As you can see, scarcity hits hard, vulnerability hits partially, uncertainty hits hard, the inevitability of death hits partially, and moral choices aren't so often there. The evidence you can see for scarcity, players run out of healing / food by mid game, level B. Most tests are tense and trade-offs. Limb injuries create tension. Icons are unclear, so some players forget the penalties. I'm thinking of adding maybe a tile that shows that you've removed the limb, or a way for a player to write it down to remember. In uncertainty, face down tiles and plus event decks keep players guessing. This is a good jump, and reactions when the cards are flipped are always welcomed. The inevitability of death. The rule enforces one or greater more deaths, but the pacing is inconsistent, sometimes late and anticlimactical. And finally, moral choices. Few situations force ugly trade-offs, yet I need more event tiles that cost another player's life or a limb. Next steps. Balance table for traps versus loot. Icon passes for loot, limb states. Build structured scenarios to tune difficulties, brands. Test betrayal frequency versus co-op survival. This will help stabilize the dread curve across playtimes. My goal recap is for overwhelming dread, scarcity, vulnerability, unnecessity, and inevitable death. What worked was my scarcity and my unnecessity. Players ran low on supplies, or event tiles created more tension. What needs worked are clear limb tracking systems where players can see if they've lost their limb, an early death trigger pacing, and in my next iteration I will be reducing kill variants, adding sacrifice event cards, and icons for players losing limbs or diseases. Thank you for watching.